Sarah Martinez walked quickly through the busy emergency room at St. Catherine's Medical Center. Her white shoes made soft sounds on the clean floor. She had been working as a nurse for 3 years now. Today felt like any other Tuesday morning, but it would change everything. The waiting room was full of people. Some sat in plastic chairs holding tissues, others paced back and forth. A woman held a crying baby. An old man sat quietly in the corner. Sarah looked at her watch. It was only 9:30 in the morning, but she already felt tired. She had worked late the night before. Her coffee was getting cold on the desk. She wanted this day to go by fast. The old man in the corner caught her eye. He looked about 70 years old. His gray hair was messy. His clothes were old and wrinkled. His jacket had small holes in it. His shoes were worn out. Sarah shook her head. Another homeless person, she thought. The man stood up slowly. He walked to the front desk where Sarah was standing. His steps were careful and slow. He held his hand over his chest. "Excuse me, miss?" the old man said in a quiet voice. "I think I need help. My chest hurts very bad." Sarah barely looked up from her computer. She was typing notes about another patient. "You need to wait like everyone else," she said without looking at him. "Take a number and sit down." "But miss, the pain is getting worse," Harold said. His voice was weak. "It feels like someone is sitting on my chest. I can barely breathe." Sarah finally looked at him. She saw his old clothes and messy hair. She saw that he did not have a nice watch or expensive shoes. In her mind, she put him in a group with all the other people who came to the emergency room without money. "Look, sir," Sarah said with a cold voice. "This is a hospital, not a free clinic. Do you have insurance? Do you have money to pay for treatment?" Harold reached into his pocket slowly. His hand was shaking a little. "I have everything I need," he said quietly. Sarah rolled her eyes. She had heard this before. People always said they could pay, but then they would disappear when the bill came. "Sure you do," Sarah said. She turned back to her computer. "The free clinic downtown opens at noon. You might want to try there instead. They help people like you." Harold stood there for a moment. The pain in his chest was getting stronger. He felt dizzy and weak. But he said nothing about Sarah's rude words. He just nodded and walked back to his chair. Sarah watched him go. She felt good about herself. She thought she was protecting the hospital from people who could not pay. She did not know that the man she just dismissed was Harold Thompson, the person who owned the entire hospital. 30 minutes passed. Sarah helped other patients who looked like they had money. A woman in an expensive dress came in with a small cut on her finger. Sarah took her to see a doctor right away. A man in a business suit complained about a headache. Sarah gave him medicine and made him comfortable. Harold sat in his corner chair the whole time. The pain in his chest was getting much worse. He felt sweat on his face even though the room was cool. His breathing was getting harder. But he did not complain. He just watched how the nurses treated different people. Sarah noticed that Harold was still there. This made her angry. Why would he not leave? She walked over to where he was sitting. "Sir, I told you already," Sarah said loudly. Other people in the waiting room could hear her. "This hospital is for people with insurance. You need to go to the free clinic. Stop wasting our time." Harold looked up at her with tired eyes. "Miss, I am not asking for anything free," he said softly. "I just need medical help. The pain is very bad now." Sarah put her hands on her hips. "Do you see all these other people waiting? They all have appointments. They all have insurance. You cannot just walk in here and expect us to drop everything for you." A young mother sitting nearby looked uncomfortable. She could see that the old man was really sick. But Sarah did not care about what other people thought. "I have been very patient with you," Sarah continued. "But if you do not leave soon, I will have to call security. We cannot have people like you taking up space that paying customers need." Harold's face became very pale. The pain in his chest felt like fire now. But he still spoke in a quiet, polite voice. "I understand," he said. "I will wait quietly. I will not bother anyone." Sarah made a sound of anger and walked away. She went back to the desk where her friend Jessica was working. "Can you believe that old man?" Sarah said to Jessica. "He has been here for an hour. He clearly has no money, but he will not leave. These homeless people think they can just come in here and get free medical care." Jessica looked over at Harold. "He does look pretty sick," she said. "Maybe we should have someone check on him." "Please," Sarah said. "He is probably just looking for pain medicine or a warm place to sleep. I have seen it 100 times before." Trust me, I know these people. Sarah felt proud of herself. She thought she was a good nurse because she could tell who deserved help and who did not. She thought she was saving the hospital money by keeping poor people away. Harold heard some of what Sarah was saying, but he did not get angry. He had learned a long time ago that getting angry did not help anything. Instead, he just sat quietly and watched. He watched Sarah give fast, good care to people in nice clothes. He watched her smile at people who showed expensive insurance cards. He watched her ignore other people who looked poor or different. Harold was learning something important about his hospital. He was seeing how his staff really treated patients when they thought no one important was watching. This was exactly why he had started coming to the emergency room dressed like a regular person. But now he was really sick. The pain in his chest was becoming too much to handle. He needed help soon or something very bad might happen. Sarah continued her work, feeling good about how she had handled the situation. She had no idea that in a few hours her whole world would change. She had no idea that the old man she had been so rude to could change her life forever. The clock on the wall showed 10:15. Harold closed his eyes and tried to stay calm. The pain was getting worse every minute. 2 hours had passed since Harold first asked for help. The emergency room was getting busier. More people came in with different problems. Sarah moved from patient to patient, but she always skipped over Harold. Harold tried to stay calm in his corner chair. The pain in his chest was now like a tight band around his heart. Sometimes the pain shot down his left arm. He knew these were bad signs, but he wanted to see how long it would take for someone to help him. A well-dressed woman walked into the emergency room. She wore an expensive coat and carried a designer purse. She had a small bandage on her hand. "I cut myself making breakfast," the woman told Sarah. "It is just a small cut, but I want to make sure it does not get infected." Sarah smiled brightly. "Of course. Let me get you registered right away." "Do you have insurance?" The woman pulled out a gold insurance card. "Yes, I have the best plan available." "Wonderful," Sarah said. "Please have a seat in our comfortable waiting area. I will get you in to see the doctor very soon." Sarah walked the woman to a special section with nice chairs and magazines. Then she went back to her computer and put the woman's name at the top of the list. Harold watched all of this happen. He saw how differently Sarah treated people based on how they looked and what they owned. This made him sad, but it also made him more determined to see what would really happen. A teenage boy came in next. His mother was with him. They both wore simple clothes that looked clean but old. The boy was holding his arm. "My son fell off his bike," the mother said to Sarah. "I think his arm might be broken." Sarah looked at them with less interest than she had shown the woman with the cut. "Do you have insurance?" she asked. The mother looked worried. "We have the basic plan for my job. It does not cover everything, but it should cover emergencies." Sarah's smile was smaller now. "Okay, fill out these forms. The wait might be a while since we have other patients ahead of you." The mother and son sat down near Harold. The boy was clearly in pain, but Sarah did not seem to care as much as she had about the woman's tiny cut. Harold felt the pain in his chest getting stronger. He stood up slowly and walked back to Sarah's desk. Each step was hard work. He felt dizzy and his breathing was difficult. "Miss," Harold said quietly, "I hate to bother you again, but the pain is getting much worse. I think something serious might be happening." Sarah looked up with an annoyed expression. "Sir, I have told you 3 times already. You need to go to the free clinic. Stop bothering me and the other patients." Harold's face was now very pale and covered with sweat. "Please, I just need someone to look at me for a few minutes. I think I might be having heart problems." Sarah laughed in a mean way. "Heart problems? Sir, do you know how much heart treatment costs? Even a simple test costs thousands of dollars. Do you have thousands of dollars?" Harold reached for his wallet, but Sarah held up her hand to stop him. "Do not even try to show me some fake insurance card," Sarah said. "I have seen it all before. You people always have some story about why you deserve free medical care." Other people in the waiting room were now watching this conversation. Some looked uncomfortable with how Sarah was treating Harold, but Sarah did not notice or care. "Look," Sarah said loudly so others could hear, "I am trying to help you by being honest. This hospital is not a charity. We serve people who can actually pay for their treatment. The free clinic has doctors who can help people in your situation." Harold felt his legs getting weak. The room seemed to spin a little, but he kept his voice calm and polite. "I understand your concern about payment. But I really do need medical help right now. Sarah rolled her eyes and turned to Jessica, who was sitting at the next computer. Jessica, can you believe this? Sarah said in a voice loud enough for everyone to hear. This man has been here for over 2 hours. I have told him 4 times to go to the free clinic, but he just will not leave. Jessica looked uncomfortable. Maybe we should have Dr. Williams take a quick look at him, she suggested quietly. Are you crazy? Sarah said. Do you know how busy Dr. Williams is? He has real patients to see. Patients who actually pay their bills. We cannot waste his time on every homeless person who walks in here claiming to have chest pain. Harold heard every word. He saw how Sarah talked about him like he was not even there. He learned that this was probably how she treated many patients who looked like they did not have money. The woman with the small cut was called in to see the doctor. She had only been waiting for 20 minutes. The teenage boy with the hurt arm was still waiting. His mother looked worried because her son's pain was getting worse. Harold slowly walked back to his chair. He sat down carefully and closed his eyes. The pain in his chest was now constant and very strong. He felt sick to his stomach. His left arm was starting to go numb. Sarah watched him walk away and felt proud of herself again. She turned to Jessica and spoke in a voice that Harold could still hear. You have to be firm with these people, Sarah said. If you show them any kindness, they will take advantage of you. They will expect free medical care whenever they want it. Jessica was not sure she agreed, but she did not want to argue with Sarah. I have been working here for 3 years, Sarah continued. I have learned how to tell who really needs help and who is just trying to get something for free. That old man is definitely trying to get free care. A businessman in an expensive suit walked into the emergency room. He was talking loudly on his phone about some business deal. I need to see a doctor right away, the man told Sarah. I have a terrible headache, and I have an important meeting in 2 hours. Sarah's attitude changed completely. Of course, sir. Let me get you registered immediately. Do you have insurance? The man showed her a platinum insurance card. The best money can buy, he said. Excellent, Sarah said. Let me put you at the top of our list. Would you like some coffee while you wait? We also have a private waiting room if you prefer. Harold watched this happen and shook his head sadly. A man with a headache was more important than someone who might be having a heart attack. Just because of the clothes they wore and the insurance cards they carried. The businessman was taken to see a doctor within 10 minutes. The teenage boy with the broken arm was still waiting. Harold was still sitting in his corner, now looking very sick. Sarah felt good about her work. She thought she was being a smart nurse by taking care of the important patients first. She had no idea that the most important person in the entire hospital was sitting just 20 feet away from her. Getting sicker by the minute. The clock on the wall now showed 12:30. Harold had been waiting for 3 hours. The pain in his chest was becoming unbearable, but he was determined to see how this situation would end. It was now 1:15 in the afternoon. Harold had been in the emergency room for almost 4 hours. The pain in his chest had become so bad that he could barely think about anything else. His shirt was wet with sweat even though the room was cool. His breathing was short and difficult. Sarah was at her desk eating a sandwich. She was laughing with Jessica about something that had happened on a TV show the night before. She had completely forgotten about Harold sitting in the corner. Harold tried to stand up from his chair. He wanted to try asking for help one more time. But when he stood up, the room started spinning around him. The pain in his chest suddenly became much worse, like someone was squeezing his heart with their hands. Harold took one step toward the desk, then another. On his third step, he felt his legs give out from under him. The pain in his chest became so intense that he could not breathe at all. Harold fell to the floor with a loud crash. His body went stiff for a moment, then became very still. His face turned blue. He was not breathing. The loud sound of Harold falling made everyone in the waiting room look up. The mother with the teenage son screamed. Other people jumped up from their chairs. Someone help him, the mother shouted. I think he's having a heart attack. Sarah dropped her sandwich and ran over to where Harold was lying on the floor. All of her medical training came back to her in that moment. She forgot about being annoyed with him. She only thought about saving his life. Jessica, call the emergency team right now, Sarah shouted as she knelt down next to Harold. Tell them we have a cardiac arrest in the waiting room. Sarah checked for Harold's pulse. She could not find one. She put her ear to his chest. He was not breathing. She knew she had to start CPR immediately or Harold would die. Sarah placed her hands on Harold's chest and started pushing hard and fast. She had done CPR many times during her training, but it was always scary when it was a real emergency. "Come on," Sarah said as she pressed on Harold's chest. "Come on, breathe." Jessica was on the phone with the emergency team. "We need help in the waiting room right away. A patient is in cardiac arrest." The other people in the waiting room moved back to give Sarah space to work. Some were crying. Others were praying. Everyone was scared. Sarah kept doing CPR, push, push, push on Harold's chest. Then she would tilt his head back and try to breathe air into his lungs. Then back to pushing on his chest. She was working as hard as she could to keep Harold alive. "Where is the emergency team?" Sarah shouted. She was starting to get tired from doing CPR, but she could not stop. Just then, the emergency team ran into the waiting room. Dr. Williams was leading them. Behind him were two other nurses and a man pushing a cart full of medical equipment. "What happened?" Dr. Williams asked as he knelt down next to Sarah. "Elderly man. Been here for about 4 hours," Sarah said while still doing CPR. "He said he was having chest pain. But I thought—" Sarah stopped talking. She realized what she had done. Dr. Williams took over the CPR from Sarah. "Get the defibrillator ready," he told the other nurses. "This man is in serious cardiac arrest." The nurses quickly got their equipment ready. They put sticky pads on Harold's chest and connected wires to a machine. The machine would send electric shocks to Harold's heart to try to make it beat normally again. "Everyone stand back," Dr. Williams shouted. The machine made a loud noise and Harold's body jumped from the electric shock. Everyone watched the monitor that showed Harold's heart rhythm. The line on the screen was still flat. "Again," Dr. Williams said. They shocked Harold's heart a second time. This time a small blip appeared on the monitor. Then another blip. Harold's heart was starting to beat again, but very weakly. "We have a pulse," one of the nurses shouted. "It is weak, but it is there." Dr. Williams quickly examined Harold. "This man is having a massive heart attack. We need to get him to surgery immediately." "How long was he having symptoms?" Sarah felt sick to her stomach. He said his chest hurt when he first came in. "That was about 4 hours ago." Dr. Williams looked shocked. 4 hours? Why was he not seen by a doctor? Sarah could not answer. She felt like she was going to throw up. She knew that Harold might die because she had not taken his symptoms seriously. The emergency team quickly put Harold on a stretcher. They were getting ready to take him to the operating room for emergency heart surgery. As they lifted Harold onto the stretcher, his wallet fell out of his pocket. It hit the floor and opened up. Papers and cards scattered everywhere. Sarah bent down to pick up Harold's things so she could give them to the nurses. But when she started gathering the papers, she saw something that made her freeze. There was a platinum credit card with Harold's name on it. There were business cards from important companies. But the thing that made Sarah's heart stop was a hospital identification badge. Sarah picked up the badge and read it carefully. It said, "Harold Thompson, chairman of the board, St. Catherine's Medical Center." Sarah's hand started shaking. She read the badge again to make sure she was seeing it correctly. "Harold Thompson, chairman of the board." This was her hospital. Jessica saw Sarah kneeling on the floor holding the badge. "What is it?" Jessica asked. Sarah could not speak. She just held up the badge so Jessica could see it. Jessica's face turned white when she read the badge. "Oh my God," Jessica whispered. "That is Harold Thompson. He owns this hospital." Sarah felt like the world was spinning around her. The man she had been rude to for 4 hours was the person who owned the entire hospital. The man whose chest pain she had ignored was the person who paid her salary. The emergency team was already taking Harold toward the operating room. Dr. Williams was running alongside the stretcher, giving instructions to the other doctors. Sarah sat on the floor holding Harold's identification badge. She realized that her whole life was about to change. She had probably lost her job. She might lose her nursing license. And worst of all, Harold Thompson might die because she had not helped him when he needed it most. People in the waiting room were still talking about what had happened. They had all seen how Sarah treated Harold before his heart attack. They had heard her rude comments about him being homeless and not deserving help. Sarah knew that there were probably security cameras that had recorded everything she had said and done. There was no way to hide what had happened. Jessica helped Sarah stand up from the floor. "Sarah, what are we going to do?" Jessica whispered. Sarah looked toward the operating room where Harold was fighting for his life. "I do not know," Sarah said quietly. I think I might have just killed the owner of our hospital." Sarah sat in the break room holding Harold's hospital badge. Her hands would not stop shaking. She had been staring at the badge for 20 minutes, hoping that somehow she had read it wrong, but the words were clear. Harold Thompson, chairman of the board, St. Catherine's Medical Center. Jessica came into the break room with a cup of coffee. Her face was pale and worried. "Sarah, I asked around about Harold Thompson. It is much worse than we thought." Sarah looked up with scared eyes. "What do you mean?" Jessica sat down next to Sarah. "I talked to Linda from the business office. She told me that Harold Thompson is not just the chairman of the board. He actually owns this entire hospital. He built it with his own money 15 years ago." Sarah felt like she was going to be sick. "He owns the hospital?" "Yes," Jessica said quietly. "And Linda told me something else. Mr. Thompson has been doing surprise visits to the hospital for the past few months. He dresses like a regular person and comes in to see how patients are treated." Sarah's face went completely white. "You mean he came here on purpose? To test us?" Jessica nodded. "Linda said he got complaints from some patients about poor treatment. Especially complaints about how the staff treats people who look poor or homeless. So he started coming in disguised as a regular patient to see what really happens." Sarah put her head in her hands. "Oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no. This is terrible." "It gets worse," Jessica said. "Linda told me that Mr. Thompson always writes reports about his visits. He takes notes about how each staff member treats patients. He has been building a file about patient care quality." Sarah started crying. "I was so rude to him. I told him to go to the free clinic. I said he was wasting our time. I said people like him should not come here." Jessica put her arm around Sarah's shoulder. "Maybe the security cameras did not catch everything. Maybe he will not remember exactly what happened because he was so sick." Just then, the head nurse, Mrs. Rodriguez, walked into the break room. She looked very serious and worried. "Sarah," Mrs. Rodriguez said, "I need to talk to you right now. Please come to my office." Sarah's heart started beating very fast. She knew this was not going to be good news. Sarah followed Mrs. Rodriguez down the hall to her office. Mrs. Rodriguez closed the door and asked Sarah to sit down. "Sarah, I just got a call from the hospital administrator," Mrs. Rodriguez said. "They want to review the security footage from this morning. Specifically, they want to see how Mr. Thompson was treated in the emergency room." Sarah felt tears coming to her eyes again. "Mrs. Rodriguez, I made a terrible mistake. I did not know who he was. I thought he was just another homeless person trying to get free medical care." Mrs. Rodriguez looked sad and disappointed. "Sarah, it should not matter who he was. Every patient deserves to be treated with respect and kindness. That is what we are supposed to do as nurses." "I know," Sarah said. "I know you are right. But I have seen so many people come in who cannot pay their bills. I thought I was protecting the hospital." "Sarah, Mr. Thompson specifically comes here to see if we treat all patients equally," Mrs. Rodriguez explained. "He wants to make sure that poor people get the same care as rich people. He believes that is what hospitals are supposed to do." Sarah realized how badly she had failed. Not only had she been rude to the owner of the hospital, but she had failed at the exact thing he was testing for. "Mrs. Rodriguez, is Mr. Thompson going to be okay?" Sarah asked. "He is still in surgery," Mrs. Rodriguez said. "Dr. Williams thinks he will survive, but it was very close. If his heart attack had lasted much longer, he might have died." Sarah started crying harder. "This is all my fault. If I had taken him to see a doctor when he first asked for help, this would not have happened." Mrs. Rodriguez handed Sarah some tissues. "Sarah, I have to be honest with you. The hospital administrator wants to see the security footage as soon as possible. Depending on what it shows, you might face serious consequences." "What kind of consequences?" Sarah asked, even though she was afraid to hear the answer. "You could lose your job," Mrs. Rodriguez said. "You might also lose your nursing license. If Mr. Thompson's family decides to sue the hospital, you could face legal problems too." Sarah felt like her whole world was falling apart. She had worked so hard to become a nurse. She had studied for years and taken many difficult tests. Now she might lose everything because of a few hours of bad choices. "Mrs. Rodriguez, what should I do?" Sarah asked. "First, you should prepare yourself for what might happen," Mrs. Rodriguez said. "Second, you should think about why you treated Mr. Thompson the way you did. This is not just about him being the hospital owner. This is about how you treat all patients." Sarah knew Mrs. Rodriguez was right. She had been treating patients differently, based on how they looked and how much money they seemed to have. That was wrong, no matter who the patients were. I want to make this right somehow, Sarah said, but I do not know how. Mrs. Rodriguez looked at Sarah with kind but sad eyes. The best thing you can do now is learn from this experience and pray that Mr. Thompson recovers fully. Just then, Mrs. Rodriguez's phone rang. She answered it and talked quietly for a few minutes. Sarah watched her face and tried to guess what the conversation was about. When Mrs. Rodriguez hung up the phone, she looked very serious. That was Dr. Williams, Mrs. Rodriguez said. Mr. Thompson's surgery went well. He is stable now, but he will need to stay in the hospital for several days. Sarah felt a little bit of relief. At least Harold was going to live. But there is something else, Mrs. Rodriguez continued. Mr. Thompson is awake and alert. He is asking to see the security footage from this morning. Sarah's heart sank again. He wants to see how I treated him? Yes, Mrs. Rodriguez said. And Sarah, you should know that Mr. Thompson has an excellent memory. Even though he was very sick, he probably remembers everything that happened. Sarah realized that there was no way to hide what she had done. The security cameras had recorded everything. Harold remembered everything. Soon everyone in the hospital would know how badly she had treated their owner. Mrs. Rodriguez, do you think there is any chance that Mr. Thompson will forgive me? Sarah asked. Mrs. Rodriguez was quiet for a long moment. I do not know, Sarah. Mr. Thompson is known for being a fair man, but he is also very serious about patient care. This situation is exactly what he was trying to prevent. Sarah left Mrs. Rodriguez's office feeling hopeless. She walked slowly back to the emergency room, but she could not concentrate on her work. Every few minutes, someone would come up to her and ask about what had happened with Harold Thompson. The news was spreading quickly through the hospital. Everyone was talking about how the owner had been ignored and mistreated in the emergency room. Sarah could see people looking at her and whispering. Jessica came over to Sarah's desk.
The administrator wants to see you in an hour, Jessica said quietly.
They have finished reviewing the security footage. Sarah nodded. She knew that in 1 hour, she would probably lose her job and her career. Everything she had worked for was about to end because she had forgotten the most important rule of being a nurse. Treat every patient with kindness and respect. Sarah sat outside the hospital administrator's office waiting to be called in. Her stomach felt sick and her hands were sweating. She'd been waiting for 30 minutes, but it felt like hours. Other hospital staff members walked by and looked at her with curious and worried expressions. Word had spread quickly through the hospital about what had happened. Everyone knew that Sarah was in serious trouble. The door to the administrator's office opened. Mr. Peterson, the hospital administrator, stepped out. He was a tall man with gray hair and a serious face. Behind him was Mrs. Chen, the head of Human Resources. Sarah, please come in, Mr. Peterson said in a quiet voice. Sarah walked into the office on shaking legs. The office was large with windows that looked out over the city. There was a big desk with 2 chairs in front of it. On the desk was a laptop computer. Please sit down, Mrs. Chen said. Sarah sat in one of the chairs. Mr. Peterson and Mrs. Chen sat behind the desk. The laptop was turned towards Sarah so she could see the screen. Sarah, we have reviewed the security footage from this morning, Mr. Peterson said. We need to discuss what we saw. Mr. Peterson turned on the laptop. Sarah could see herself on the security camera video. The video showed the emergency room waiting area from this morning. This video starts at 9:30 this morning, Mr. Peterson explained. We can see Mr. Thompson entering the emergency room and approaching your desk. Sarah watched herself on the video. She saw Harold walking slowly to her desk, holding his chest. She saw herself barely looking up from her computer when he asked for help. The video had sound so they could all hear the conversation. Sarah heard her own voice saying, You need to wait like everyone else. Take a number and sit down. Sarah felt embarrassed watching herself be so rude to someone who was clearly in pain. Sarah, can you explain why you did not take Mr. Thompson's complaint of chest pain seriously? Mrs. Chen asked. Sarah's voice was very quiet. I thought he was homeless. I assumed he could not pay for treatment. I have seen many people come in who just want free medical care. Mr. Peterson fast-forwarded the video to the second time Harold approached Sarah's desk. This is about an hour later, Mr. Peterson said. Mr. Thompson told you his chest pain was getting worse and he was having trouble breathing. On the video, Sarah heard herself saying, Look, sir, this is a hospital, not a free clinic. Do you have insurance? Do you have money to pay for treatment? Sarah felt terrible watching herself treat Harold so badly. She could see on the video that Harold was getting paler and more sick-looking, but she had ignored all the warning signs. "Sarah, at what point did you realize that Mr. Thompson was seriously ill?" Mrs. Chen asked. "Not until he collapsed," Sarah admitted. "I thought he was pretending to be sick to get attention." Mr. Peterson showed Sarah the part of the video where she told Harold to go to the free clinic downtown. They could hear her saying, "The free clinic downtown opens at noon. You might want to try there instead. They help people like you." "Sarah, what did you mean when you said people like you?" Mr. Peterson asked. Sarah felt ashamed. "I meant people who I thought were poor or homeless. People who I thought could not pay their bills." Mrs. Chen made notes on a piece of paper. "Sarah, how long have you been treating patients differently based on their appearance or perceived financial status?" Sarah thought about this question. She realized that she had been doing this for months, maybe even years. "I guess I have been doing it for a while," she said quietly. "I thought I was helping the hospital save money." Mr. Peterson showed Sarah the part of the video where she talked to Jessica about Harold. They could hear Sarah saying, "These homeless people think they can just come in here and get free medical care." "Sarah, you made these comments loud enough for other patients to hear," Mrs. Chen pointed out. This created an uncomfortable environment for everyone in the waiting room. Sarah watched the video of Harold sitting in his chair, getting sicker and sicker, while she helped other patients who looked wealthy. She saw herself rush to help the woman with the tiny cut on her finger, while Harold sat in pain for hours. "The most concerning part," Mr. Peterson said, "is that Mr. Thompson was showing classic signs of a heart attack, but you ignored them because of his appearance." Sarah saw the final part of the video where Harold collapsed. She watched herself run over to help him, but by then it was almost too late. "Sarah, do you understand how serious this situation is?" Mrs. Chen asked. "Yes," Sarah said. Tears were running down her face. "I almost let someone die because I judged them by their clothes and appearance." Mr. Peterson closed the laptop. "Sarah, this goes against everything our hospital stands for. Mr. Thompson built this hospital specifically to serve all people equally, regardless of their ability to pay." "I did not know that," Sarah said. "Every nurse receives training about our hospital's mission when they start working here," Mrs. Chen reminded her. "You should have known that we treat all patients with equal respect." Sarah remembered her training from 3 years ago. She had forgotten about the hospital's mission to serve everyone equally. She had let her own prejudices override her professional training. "Sarah, what you did could have resulted in Mr. Thompson's death," Mr. Peterson said. "Even worse, this behavior suggests that you may have treated other patients poorly based on their appearance." Sarah realized this was true. She thought about all the times she had been less helpful to patients who looked poor or different. She had never thought about how this made those patients feel. "What happens now?" Sarah asked, though she was afraid to hear the answer. Mrs. Chen looked at her notes. "Sarah, your actions constitute gross negligence and discrimination. Normally, this would result in immediate termination and a report to the state nursing board." Sarah felt like she could not breathe. Losing her nursing license would mean she could never work as a nurse again anywhere. "However," Mr. Peterson continued, "there is one unusual factor in this case. Mr. Thompson specifically requested to speak with you before we make any final decisions." Sarah was confused. "He wants to talk to me? Why?" "We do not know," Mrs. Chen said. "Mr. Thompson is recovering from surgery, but he is alert and able to have visitors. He specifically asked to meet with you before we proceed with any disciplinary action." Sarah felt a tiny bit of hope, but mostly she felt scared. "When does he want to see me?" "Tomorrow morning," Mr. Peterson said. "Sarah, I want you to understand that this meeting will not change the fact that your behavior was unacceptable. But Mr. Thompson owns this hospital, and if he wants to speak with you, we will honor that request." Sarah nodded. "Should I prepare anything to say to him?" Mrs. Chen stood up from her chair. "Sarah, I suggest you think very carefully about why you acted the way you did. Mr. Thompson will probably want to understand what led to this situation." Mr. Peterson also stood up. "Sarah, you are suspended from duty until after your meeting with Mr. Thompson. You should not come to work tomorrow except for your appointment with him." Sarah left the administrator's office feeling confused and scared. She was going to lose her job, but Harold Thompson wanted to talk to her first. She could not understand why he would want to meet with someone who had treated him so badly. As Sarah walked through the hospital to leave, she saw other staff members looking at her and whispering. Everyone knew what had happened. Sarah felt embarrassed and ashamed. That night Sarah could not sleep. She kept thinking about Harold lying on the emergency room floor, fighting for his life. She kept thinking about all the other patients she might have treated unfairly over the years. Sarah realized that she had become the kind of nurse she never wanted to be. She had let prejudice and assumptions cloud her judgment. Tomorrow, she would have to face the man whose life she had almost cost and try to explain why she had failed so completely at being a good nurse. Sarah stood outside Harold Thompson's hospital room door. Her hands were shaking so badly that she could barely hold the flowers she had brought. She had been standing there for 10 minutes trying to get enough courage to knock. The door was slightly open and she could see Harold lying in the hospital bed. He was connected to several machines that monitored his heart. He looked much smaller and older than he had in the emergency room yesterday. Sarah finally raised her hand and knocked softly on the door. "Come in," Harold said in a weak but clear voice. Sarah pushed the door open and walked slowly into the room. Harold turned his head to look at her. His eyes were tired but alert. "Mr. Thompson," Sarah said quietly, "I brought you some flowers. I wanted to say how sorry I am." Harold looked at the flowers, then back at Sarah. "Thank you for the flowers. Please sit down." Sarah placed the flowers on the table next to Harold's bed and sat in the chair beside him. She did not know what to say. How do you apologize to someone whose life you almost cost? "Mr. Thompson, I know that nothing I can say will make up for how I treated you yesterday," Sarah began. "I was wrong in every possible way." Harold studied Sarah's face for a moment before speaking. "Tell me, Sarah, why did you treat me the way you did?" Sarah felt tears starting in her eyes. "I thought you were homeless. I assumed you could not pay for medical care. I have seen so many people come to the emergency room who cannot afford treatment, and I thought I was protecting the hospital." "But Sarah," Harold said gently, "why does it matter if someone is homeless or cannot pay? Are they not still human beings who deserve medical care?" Sarah realized that Harold was asking the most important question of all. "You are right," she said. "It should not matter at all. Every person who comes to the hospital should be treated with respect and kindness." Harold nodded slowly. "Sarah, do you know why I built this hospital?" Sarah shook her head. "No, sir." Harold looked out the window for a moment before continuing. 15 years ago, my wife was very sick. We went to several hospitals looking for help. Most of the hospitals treated us well because we had money and good insurance." Harold paused, and Sarah could see that this was a difficult memory for him. "But one day, my wife was feeling very sick while we were visiting a poor part of the city. We went to the emergency room at the nearest hospital. The staff there assumed we were poor because of the neighborhood we were in and the simple clothes we were wearing." Sarah listened carefully, beginning to understand why the situation was so important to Harold. "The nurses and doctors at that hospital treated my wife terribly." Harold continued. "They made her wait for hours. They were rude and dismissive. They assumed she was there for free care and did not take her symptoms seriously." Harold's voice became quieter and sadder. "My wife died in that emergency room while waiting for proper care. The doctors later said that if she had been treated immediately, she might have lived." Sarah felt like someone had punched her in the stomach. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Mr. Thompson, I am so sorry. After my wife died, I promised myself that I would build a hospital where every patient would be treated equally," Harold said. "Rich or poor, young or old, it would not matter. Everyone would receive the same excellent care." Sarah understood now why her behavior had been so hurtful to Harold. She had done exactly what those other hospital staff had done to his wife. "Mr. Thompson, what I did to you was exactly what happened to your wife," Sarah said. "I am so ashamed." Harold looked directly at Sarah. "Yes, it was exactly the same. For 4 hours yesterday, I experienced what my wife went through before she died. I felt dismissed, ignored, and treated as less than human." Sarah was crying now. "I do not know how to make this right. I know I am going to lose my job and my nursing license, but more than that, I am horrified that I became the kind of person who could treat another human being so badly." Harold was quiet for several minutes. Sarah waited, not knowing what else to say. Finally, Harold spoke again. "Sarah, do you know why I asked to see you today?" "No, sir. I was wondering about that. I asked to see you because I want to understand if you are capable of learning from this experience," Harold said. "I want to know if you can become a better nurse and a better person." Sarah looked up at Harold with surprise. You are not just going to fire me?" Harold smiled for the first time since Sarah had entered the room. Sarah, I believe in second chances. My wife always told me that people can change if they truly want to. I do want to change, Sarah said quickly. I want to be the kind of nurse your wife would have been proud of. Harold's expression became more serious. Sarah, change is not easy. It requires you to examine why you acted the way you did. It requires you to confront your own prejudices and biases. Sarah nodded. I know. I have been thinking about this all night. I realized that I have been treating patients differently for a long time. Not just yesterday, but for months or maybe years. Why do you think you did that? Harold asked. Sarah thought carefully before answering. I think I was scared. Scared that the hospital would lose money. Scared that I would get in trouble for spending time on patients who could not pay. But mostly, I think I was scared of people who were different from me. Harold nodded. That is an honest answer. Fear and ignorance often lead to discrimination. But Sarah, fear is not an excuse for treating people badly. I know, Sarah said. I understand that now. Harold leaned forward slightly in his bed. Sarah, I am going to make you an offer. Instead of firing you, I am going to give you a choice. Sarah felt a spark of hope. What kind of choice? You can choose to be fired and reported to the nursing board for your behavior yesterday, Harold said. Or you can choose to enter a special training program that I have developed. Sarah was confused. A training program? Yes, Harold explained. It is a program designed to help healthcare workers redevelop their empathy and understanding of patient care. It involves working with homeless populations, elderly patients, and people from different backgrounds. Sarah felt excited and nervous at the same time. What would I have to do? Harold smiled. You would spend 6 months working in free clinics, homeless shelters, and community health centers. You would learn about the challenges that poor and homeless people face when trying to get medical care. Would I still be a nurse at this hospital? Sarah asked. Eventually, yes, Harold said. But first, you need to understand what it feels like to be on the other side. You need to see how patients are affected when they are treated poorly. Sarah did not hesitate. Yes, I want to do the program. I want to learn how to be a better nurse. Harold smiled more widely. I was hoping you would say that. Sarah, this program will not be easy. You will see things that will make you uncomfortable. You will work with patients who challenge your assumptions about people. I understand, Sarah said. I want to do whatever it takes to make up for what I did. Harold reached over and patted Sarah's hand gently. Sarah, you cannot undo what happened yesterday, but you can make sure that it never happens again. You can become the kind of nurse who treats every patient with dignity and respect. Sarah felt like a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. She was getting a second chance, an opportunity to become the person she should have been all along. Mr. Thompson, why are you being so kind to me? Sarah asked. After what I did to you, you would have every right to ruin my career. Harold looked thoughtful. Sarah, hatred and revenge do not heal anything. My wife always believed that education and compassion could change the world. I want to honor her memory by helping you become a better person. Sarah felt grateful and determined. I promise you, Mr. Thompson, I will not waste this opportunity. I will become the kind of nurse that your wife would have been proud to know. Harold smiled. I believe you will, Sarah. And I think my wife would be happy to know that something good came from this difficult situation. 2 weeks later, Sarah started her new training program. Harold had arranged for her to work at the downtown community health center, a place that provided free medical care to people who could not afford to go to regular hospitals. On her first day, Sarah met Dr. Maria Santos, who would be supervising her training. Dr. Santos was a small woman with kind eyes and gentle hands that had clearly helped many patients over the years. Sarah, welcome to our clinic, Dr. Santos said. Mr. Thompson told me about your situation. He believes you have the potential to become an excellent nurse, but you need to learn some important lessons first. Sarah nodded. I am ready to learn whatever you think I need to know. Dr. Santos smiled. Good, but I want you to understand that this will not be easy. You will see patients who have been ignored and mistreated by the healthcare system. You will learn about problems you never knew existed. Sarah's first patient was an elderly man named Robert. He was about the same age as Harold Thompson, but Robert looked much older and sicker. His clothes were dirty and torn. He smelled like he had not had a shower in weeks. Robert comes here every few weeks, Dr. Santos explained quietly. He is homeless and has diabetes. Many hospitals have turned him away because he cannot pay for treatment. Sarah felt uncomfortable at first. Robert reminded her of how Harold had looked in the emergency room. But this time, instead of judging Robert, Sarah tried to see him as a person who needed help. "Hello, Robert," Sarah said gently. "My name is Sarah. I'm going to help take care of you today." Robert looked surprised. Most medical staff spoke to him rudely or not at all. "Thank you, miss. You are very kind." As Sarah checked Robert's blood pressure and blood sugar levels, he told her his story. Robert had been a construction worker for 30 years. When he got too old to do heavy work, he lost his job. Then he lost his apartment when he could not pay rent. Now he lived on the streets and tried to manage his diabetes without regular medical care. "Sometimes I go to hospital emergency rooms when I feel really sick," Robert told Sarah. "But most of the time, they just give me a little medicine and tell me to leave. They act like I am bothering them." Sarah felt terrible hearing this. She realized that she had probably treated patients like Robert the same way she had treated Harold Thompson. "Robert, you are not bothering anyone," Sarah said. "Everyone deserves good medical care no matter what their situation is." Robert smiled. "You are different from most nurses, miss. Most of them look at me like I am dirty or dangerous." Over the next few weeks, Sarah met many patients like Robert. She met Maria, a single mother who worked 2 jobs but still could not afford health insurance for her children. She met James, a veteran who had mental health problems and had been living on the streets for 5 years. Each patient taught Sarah something new about the challenges that poor people face when trying to get medical care. She learned that many hospitals treated these patients as problems to be gotten rid of, rather than people to be helped. Sarah also learned about the barriers that kept poor people from getting regular medical care. Many could not afford to take time off work to see a doctor. Others did not have transportation to get to medical appointments. Some were afraid to go to hospitals because they had been treated rudely in the past. "Sarah, what have you learned so far?" Dr. Santos asked after Sarah had been working at the clinic for a month. "I have learned that I was completely wrong about poor and homeless patients," Sarah said. "I thought they were trying to take advantage of the healthcare system. But really they are just people who need help and have nowhere else to go." Dr. Santos nodded. "What else?" "I learned that when healthcare workers treat patients badly, it makes those patients afraid to seek medical care." Sarah continued. "Some patients wait until they are extremely sick before coming for help because they expect to be treated rudely." "That is exactly right," Dr. Santos said. "Sarah, poor treatment by healthcare workers can actually make patients sicker. When people are afraid to seek medical care, small problems become big problems." Sarah thought about Harold Thompson waiting for 4 hours with chest pain. If he had been an actual homeless person instead of the hospital owner, he might have died because of her treatment. "Dr. Santos, I want to do more than just learn," Sarah said. "I want to help make things better for these patients." Dr. Santos smiled. "What do you have in mind?" Sarah had been thinking about this for weeks. "I want to go back to St. Catherine's Hospital and teach other nurses about what I have learned. I want to help them understand how their behavior affects patients." "That is a wonderful idea," Dr. Santos said. "But first you need to complete your training here. You still have 4 more months of work to do." Over the next few months, Sarah worked with hundreds of patients at the community health center. She learned to see past people's appearances and focus on their medical needs. She learned to treat every patient with respect and kindness, no matter what their circumstances were. Sarah also volunteered at a homeless shelter, helping people get basic medical care. She worked at a senior center, providing health screenings for elderly people who could not afford regular doctor visits. Each experience taught her more about the importance of treating all patients equally. One day, while Sarah was working at the homeless shelter, she met a man who looked familiar. It took her a moment to recognize him, but then she realized it was Harold Thompson. "Mr. Thompson," Sarah said with surprise. "What are you doing here?" Harold was dressed in simple clothes and was helping serve dinner to homeless people. "Hello, Sarah. I volunteer here every week." "I've been doing this for years." Sarah was amazed. "You help serve food to homeless people?" Harold smiled. "Yes. After my wife died, I realized that helping others was the best way to honor her memory. These people need more than just medical care. They need to know that someone cares about them." Sarah watched Harold talk gently with each person he served. He knew many of them by name and asked about their health and their lives. The homeless people clearly respected and appreciated him. "Mr. Thompson, you could pay other people to do this work," Sarah said. "Why do you do it yourself?" Harold thought for a moment before answering. Sarah, when you have money and power, it is easy to forget what life is like for people who have neither. Coming here reminds me why I built the hospital and why patient care is so important. Sarah realized that Harold was still testing himself, just like he had done when he came to the emergency room. He wanted to make sure he never forgot what it felt like to be vulnerable and in need of help. Mr. Thompson, working here and at the clinic has changed my whole understanding of nursing, Sarah said. I used to think that good nurses were efficient and protected the hospital's interests. Now I understand that good nurses are compassionate and protect patients' dignity. Harold nodded approvingly. Sarah, you are learning the most important lesson of all. Healthcare is not just about treating diseases. It is about treating human beings with respect and kindness. As Sarah's 6-month training program came to an end, she felt like a completely different person than she had been before. She no longer judged patients by their appearance or their ability to pay. She had learned to see each patient as a unique individual with their own story and their own needs. Dr. Santos called Sarah into her office on her last day at the community health center. Sarah, I have written a report about your progress for Mr. Thompson, Dr. Santos said. I am happy to say that you have exceeded all of our expectations. Sarah felt proud but also nervous. What happens now? Do I get to go back to work at St. Catherine's Hospital? Dr. Santos smiled. That will be up to Mr. Thompson. But Sarah, I want you to know that you have become an exceptional nurse. Any hospital would be lucky to have you. Sarah thanked Dr. Santos for everything she had taught her. As she left the community health center, Sarah felt ready to return to St. Catherine's Hospital. But she also knew that she would never forget the lessons she had learned or the patients she had met during her training. 6 months after her training program ended, Sarah walked through the doors of St. Catherine's Medical Center for the first time since the day she had almost let Harold Thompson die. Everything looked the same, but Sarah felt like a completely different person. Harold Thompson was waiting for her in the lobby. He looked healthy and strong again, completely recovered from his heart attack. When he saw Sarah, he smiled warmly and walked over to greet her. Sarah, welcome back, Harold said, shaking her hand. Dr. Santos tells me that you have done excellent work during your training. Thank you, Mr. Thompson, Sarah said. The past 6 months have been the most important of my life. I learned things about nursing and about myself that I never knew before. Harold led Sarah to his office on the top floor of the hospital. The office had large windows that looked out over the city. On the walls were pictures of patients Harold had helped over the years. Sarah, before we talk about your future here at the hospital, I want to hear about what you learned during your training, Harold said. Sarah sat down across from Harold's desk. She had thought about this conversation many times during the past few months. Mr. Thompson, I learned that I'd become the kind of nurse I never wanted to be, Sarah began. I was judging patients based on their appearance and their ability to pay, instead of focusing on their medical needs. Harold nodded encouragingly. What else did you learn? I learned that every patient has a story, Sarah continued. The homeless man who comes to the emergency room might be a veteran who served his country. The woman who cannot afford insurance might be working 2 jobs to support her children. Everyone deserves to be treated with respect and kindness. That is exactly right, Harold said. Sarah, tell me how this experience has changed the way you want to practice nursing. Sarah felt passionate as she spoke. I want to make sure that no patient ever feels the way you felt in our emergency room. I want to help other nurses understand that our job is to heal people, not to judge them. Harold smiled. Sarah, that leads me to why I asked you to come back to St. Catherine's. I have a special job offer for you. Sarah felt excited and nervous. What kind of job? I want you to head our new patient advocacy department, Harold explained. Your job would be to make sure that all patients receive equal treatment, regardless of their background or ability to pay. Sarah could not believe what she was hearing. You want me to be in charge of a whole department? Yes, Harold said. Sarah, you have learned these lessons the hard way. That makes you the perfect person to teach others and to make sure our hospital truly serves all patients equally. Sarah felt overwhelmed with gratitude. Mr. Thompson, I do not know what to say. After what I did to you, I never expected to have another chance, let alone an opportunity like this. Harold leaned forward in his chair. Sarah, I believe that people who have made mistakes and learned from them often become the best teachers. You understand both sides now. What it feels like to be a healthcare worker under pressure, and what it feels like to be a patient who is treated unfairly. Over the next hour, Harold explained Sarah's new responsibilities. She would train new nurses about patient care and dignity. She would investigate complaints about poor treatment. She would work with community organizations to make sure that poor and homeless people felt welcome at the hospital. "Sarah, there is one more thing," Harold said as their meeting was ending. "I want you to help me expand the mystery patient program to other hospitals around the country." Sarah was interested. "How would that work?" "We would train hospital owners and administrators to visit their own facilities as regular patients," Harold explained. "They would see firsthand how their staff treats different types of patients." Sarah thought this was a brilliant idea. "Mr. Thompson, that could help improve patient care at hospitals everywhere." "Exactly," Harold said. "And Sarah, I want you to help develop the training materials and procedures for this program." Sarah accepted Harold's offer immediately. She started her new job the following week and quickly began making changes at St. Catherine's Hospital. Sarah's first project was to create a training program for all hospital staff about treating patients with dignity and respect. She used stories from her own experience and from the patients she had met during her 6 months of training. "Every patient who comes through our doors is someone's mother, father, son, or daughter," Sarah would tell new nurses during their training. "They deserve our care and respect, no matter what they look like or how much money they have." Sarah also created a system for patients to report problems with their treatment. She made sure that complaints were investigated quickly and fairly. When staff members were found to be treating patients poorly, Sarah worked with them to improve their behavior, just as Harold had done with her. 1 year after starting her new job, Sarah received a letter that made her cry happy tears. It was from Robert, the homeless man with diabetes who had been one of her first patients at the community health center. "Dear Nurse Sarah," the letter said, "I wanted to tell you that I went to St. Catherine's Hospital last week when my diabetes was acting up. The nurses there treated me with such kindness and respect. One of them told me that they had learned about patient care from someone named Sarah Martinez. I told her that I knew you, and that you were the kindest nurse I had ever met. Thank you for making hospitals a better place for people like me." Sarah showed the letter to Harold when she saw him in the hallway later that day. "This is exactly what we hoped would happen," Harold said after reading the letter. "Sarah, you are changing lives every day." "Mr. Thompson, I still think about that day in the emergency room," Sarah said. "I am so sorry for how I treated you." Harold put his hand on Sarah's shoulder. "Sarah, that day led to something beautiful. It led to you becoming the nurse you were meant to be. It led to our hospital becoming a better place for all patients. Sarah's patient advocacy program became a model for hospitals around the country. She wrote training materials, gave speeches at medical conferences, and helped other hospitals improve their patient care. 3 years after her transformation began, Sarah was invited to speak at a national nursing conference. She told her story to hundreds of nurses and doctors, explaining how she had learned to see patients as human beings first and medical cases second. "I used to think that being a good nurse meant being efficient and protecting the hospital's bottom line," Sarah told the audience. "But I learned that being a good nurse means treating every patient with the same care and respect that you would want for your own family." After her speech, a young nurse approached Sarah with tears in her eyes. "Miss Martinez, your story has changed how I think about nursing," the young nurse said. "I realize that I have been judging patients the same way you used to. I want to do better." Sarah smiled and gave the young nurse a hug. "The fact that you recognize this means you are already on the right path. Remember, every patient is a human being who deserves our compassion." Harold Thompson's Mystery Patient Program expanded to over 50 hospitals across the country. Sarah helped train hospital administrators and owners to see their facilities through patients' eyes. The program led to improved patient care and better treatment of vulnerable populations at hospitals everywhere. On the 5th anniversary of Harold's heart attack, Sarah organized a special celebration at St. Catherine's Hospital. The event honored all the patients who had shared their stories and helped improve patient care. Robert, the homeless man with diabetes, was invited as a guest of honor. He had found housing and was managing his diabetes much better thanks to the improved care he received at area hospitals. 5 years ago, hospitals were scary places for people like me, Robert said during the celebration. Now, thanks to people like Sarah and Mr. Thompson, I know that I will be treated with respect and kindness when I need medical care. Harold spoke last at the celebration. 5 years ago, I had a heart attack in this hospital's emergency room. That experience could have ended tragically, but instead it became the beginning of something wonderful. Harold looked at Sarah, who was sitting in the front row. Sometimes our worst moments can become our greatest opportunities to grow and help others. Sarah Martinez is living proof that people can change, and that one person's transformation can improve the lives of thousands of others. Sarah felt proud of how far she had come, but she also remained humble about her journey. She never forgot the lessons she had learned during those 6 months of training, and she never stopped working to ensure that every patient received the care and respect they deserved. Years later, when Sarah looked back on her career, she realized that the day she almost let Harold Thompson die had been the most important day of her professional life. It was the day she stopped being just a nurse and became a true healer. Harold Thompson's hospital continued to serve as a model for patient care around the world, and Sarah Martinez continued to teach other healthcare workers that the most important part of medicine is not the technology or the procedures, but the simple act of treating every human being with dignity, compassion, and respect.